Hello everyone, Drew Wilson of Your Era Gamer here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Yes indeed, the table is back. You know what that means? Show and tell time. I like show and tell time. And truth be told, I prefer to do these videos a little bit sooner in the year, but you know what? Better late than never, right? I normally get these retrospective videos done at the beginning of the year, but if you can kind of take a look at the actual lineup that I have for you today, you'll probably see why. Spoiler alert, it's because the games were really long and it take a very long time to play through in order to get a proper review. But with that said, let's check out what I got to play throughout the year of 2023. So I bounced around a considerable amount, so you'll be noticing like different genres, that sort of thing, and just going all over the place. But the year started off with Perfect Dark Zero. And of course, Perfect Dark was a series, or at least a game, that I was really enjoying. Perfect Dark for the Nintendo 64 to be precise. And of course, I was excited. Even though I heard some bad reviews about Perfect Dark Zero, I thought, you know what, maybe people just didn't understand the style or something like that, because I've heard people, in retrospect, think Perfect Dark wasn't that great of a game, so I was kind of treating the bad reviews with a grain of salt. And unfortunately, when I got to playing this game, I can see why there was so many bad reviews. It was not a good game. I can tell you that much. I think the level design left a lot to be desired. The characters were so badly written. Like, it was almost a satire version without trying to be a satire version of Perfect Dark. And I was very disappointed in this particular title. So it was a bit of a rough start for the year for me. Now, this was followed up by another game that I was actually a lot more excited to play. And that, of course, was Forza Motorsport 3. Now, I had already played at the time Forza Motorsport 2, thoroughly enjoyed the game, and I was really excited to get to see what the sequel was going to be like. And I can definitely say the sequel didn't disappoint. It had a lot of the great features that the previous game had added to it, that sort of thing, and it was just a very cool concept, and you could have tons of hours enjoying this, especially if you enjoy simulation racing titles. So this ended up being a really good game and something that I would definitely recommend. And then I went to try another shooter game, and that of course was from another franchise that I had at least some high hopes still, and I thought maybe the reviews were a little bit exaggerated, but, you know, I had to try it anyway regardless. And that, of course, was Turok. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed Turok Dinosaur Hunter for the Nintendo 64. I also thoroughly enjoyed Turok 2 Seeds of Evil. And the series kind of petered off from there. Shadow of Oblivion, it was a kind of a hit and miss title. And Turok Evolution, oh, let's not talk about that. But Turok, I thought, well, maybe they'll get back to the basics of what the game was like, and maybe they will turn things around, and they really didn't do that. It was really badly designed, really difficult for seemingly no apparent reason, and honestly, throughout my short stint playing this game, like the thoughts of that was going through my head was, I cannot wait to stop playing this game. Like, it was that bad, and another huge disappointment for me. Now, with that disappointment behind me, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try a different game, and this one has a lot of promise, at least from a review standpoint, and that, of course, was Forza Motorsport 4. And this game takes a lot of what they had in the previous title, puts it in this game, and does some, adjustments. And sure, there was less of a tuner style going for it, like it was just less important, but there was other features, like instead of having a calendar system, they decided to have a world view system, and it was a different take, and it was still pretty enjoyable. So I thoroughly enjoyed that particular game. So I then went on to check out another shooter title, and that was, of course, Modern Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And I had heard a lot of good things about this title, but honestly, I had also heard a lot of good things about literally every other Call of Duty title, and I have to be honest here, like a lot of Call of Duty games, it was just when you have good expectations for a game, you're basically in for disappointment. Let's just be real here. Like a lot of the games are just plain mediocre, but this game seems to be the exception to the rule. Like this was actually a pretty decent title. The level design had a lot more thought to it. There was some interesting features, and it was not a bland and boring experience. Like it was actually kind of decent. So I was pleasantly surprised by this particular title. And so, I thought maybe this franchise is turning around after I played this, and maybe the later titles are going to be pretty good too. I don't know. So, keeping with the ping-ponging around of different genres, I decided to try another game that I heard a lot of good things about, and that, of course, was Forza Horizon. And this is like a different take on it. Instead of like a sim-style racing like the Motorsport series, it was more of an arcade style. You had an open map system. You could drive anywhere, which is a very different take on a racing game. And you had that whole music festival vibe to it. And this game, I had a lot of fun with this. There was a lot of great features. It was very enjoyable. I think the only thing that was really holding this game back was the fact that there was a bunch of online features that, of course, no longer exist anymore. And as a result, parts of the game are actually locked out, including like buying the treasure map, for instance. Like you have to have an online connection to buy the treasure map, which makes no sense whatsoever to me. So, but other than that, like apart from like the small minor things beyond that, like this would end up being a really good title that I would definitely recommend. Now, moving on, I decided to try another Call of Duty game, and that of course was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, direct sequel to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. What could go wrong? Well, turns out a lot. This was a very forgettable game. It went back to the linear style levels of just you go down a long hallway essentially, you basically shoot a few enemies, and that was about it. Like I honestly barely even remember what went on in this particular game. It was so forgettable, and honestly, it was just went back to the old, yep, Call of Duty, another mediocre title. So I decided to go back and try another Forza game, and that of course was Forza Horizon 2. And I heard a lot of good things about this title, and I was not disappointed. This was another really good racing game. There was the open map system. There's some features were kind of reimagined. There was some improvements overall, and this had continued on with the whole music festival vibe to it, and it ended up being a really good title, and I definitely recommend it. So then moving on, I decided to play another Call of Duty game, and that was, of course, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And yeah, it ended up continuing with the theme of mediocre game, nothing really too memorable about it. And it was weird too because I've actually played Call of Duty Black Ops 3 first, and then I played this title, and I thought, okay, this is going to be at least a sci-fi style shooter, right? But it turns out not so much. This is just another kind of bland, boring title that wasn't even sci-fi, so it was kind of a bit of a surprise to me, and honestly, not something that was too memorable to me in the end. Another mediocre title. I then mixed things up a little bit and decided to play a completely different genre, and of course it was an RPG title, and it was of course the title that a lot of people know, and that of course was The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I had played pretty much every mainline Elder Scrolls game at this point, and honestly I have to say I think the game franchise really started taking off with Oblivion. Morrowind was kind of okay, nothing too great. Oblivion really tightened things up and made it a really interesting game. This game, however, does change a few things, like There's no more major skills versus minor skills. It's all skills that you use to level up your character. And it was a reimagining, and it worked pretty well. And you still had the same open world concept. You still had millions and millions of quests you can do. You could spend hundreds of hours on this game. And still had the usual problem of game bugs and crashes and that sort of thing. But other than that, it was generally a pretty good game as long as you can get through that initial learning curve. So this is another highly recommended title from me as far as I was concerned. And then, of course, that leads us to the last game of the year, and that was, of course, Call of Duty Black Ops. Yeah, I kind of went in the opposite direction this time around. That was mostly because of disc availability as well as a few bad discs that kind of got in the way, but I did eventually play this, and of course, go figure, another mediocre, largely forgettable title. I didn't really care for it that much, honestly. It was just linear level design and kind of forgettable story writing in the end, so nothing too fancy there. So we have the year of 2023 for me, and it was a very interesting, kind of all over the map admittedly, but pretty interesting experience. And of course this leads us to what are my recommendations, and I actually have a lot of recommendations despite some of the disappointments. And those recommendations are Forza Horizon, Forza Motorsport 3, Forza Horizon 2, Forza Motorsport 4, and of course, The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Basically all the racing games in the RPG, all the non-shooters actually, but these are all really good games. And honestly, when it comes to pick of the year for the Xbox 360 titles I played, I could go with just about pretty much any one of these. Like, it's very close to whether or not I liked Forza Horizon 2, Skyrim, or Motorsport 4. Like, I could go with any one of these. But after a lot of thinking, I ended up picking the winner for this year for me, and that of course was Forza Horizon 2. Yeah, it was really that close. Very enjoyable though, and great music. Hell, there's just so much to enjoy. Tons of racing involved, and it was just such an immersive experience. And you could say that with just about every one of these recommendations, but yeah, this one to me takes the crown. So I wanted to hear from you. What did you think of this whole lot? Was there some titles that you thought I could have talked better about? Were there titles that I didn't recommend that you thought was great? Or did you agree with my picks? Did you think these titles were actually really good and you totally agree with it? Let me know in the comments below. And just generally, what did you think of what I ended up picking? Was this a pretty good, well-rounded selection? Let me know in the comments below as well. So I guess that is all for now, and until next time, what is your era?